So welcome to Amateur Radio Roundtable. Tonight is Tuesday, July 28th. I've got Ted Randall with me, our co-host, WB8PUM. I'm Tom Medlin, W5KUB. And this is Amateur Radio Roundtable. Tonight we've got a great guest with us. Riley Hollingsworth is with us, K4ZDH from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Riley retired from the FCC in 2008, where he was a special counsel for the Spectrum Enforcement Division. I think that means he was kind of watching over the amateur radio spectrum, and we'll get more from him later if his job was broader than that. A couple things with Riley. In 2006, he received the Hamvention's Special Achievement Award for helping to eliminate a lot of malicious interference. And, of course, we need that on the ham bands. And then later in 2013, he won the Sarnoff citation from the Radio Club of America, and that was for significant contributions to the advancement of electronic communications. We'll talk more about that award with him in just a minute. So let's just go over here and see who we got on here with us tonight. Ted Randall's with us, and Riley's here. Riley, how you doing tonight? Hey, Riley, let's just start about ham radio, man. How did you first think about getting your license? What inspired you to do that?
Well, now I can tell the real story. I had to tell the politically correct story for years, but the actual story is I had an uncle. I was a kid. He lived in a mill village, and if you're not from the South, you may not know what mill villages are. But a mill village is a section of little houses, look like shoe boxes, very long, owned by the textile mills, and they run them out to the workers. Anyway, they're very close together, and he had been a radio man in the Army, and he had built this little box to interfere with broadcast television because his neighbor, Mrs. Bagley, I can use the name because all parties are deceased now, had dogs in her backyard that weren't fenced, and he had a Lincoln with big white wall tires on it. So every morning when he would come out to go to work, he would be mad about what the dogs had done to his tires. So he built this box to interfere with her television. And when my cousin and I went over there, we could talk him into getting it out usually. And I still remember that thing. He had built it, had 3 tubes in it, and it would interfere with a TV station in Charlotte and Asheville and around in there. And he would turn it on, and we could see Mrs. Bagley from the window in her recliner chair. And when he would turn that on, she would get up and walk over to the TV, hit it with a newspaper, and he would turn it off, and the picture would be okay. And so I was fascinated by that thing, and the tubes smelled, how they heated up, how the whole box got hot. And he also had a collection of shortwave radios, the big Zenith. I can't remember the model of that. And because I was so interested in the radio, he taught me about shortwave, and he had a friend in town who was a ham operator, and he took me over there one day to see his station, and I was hooked. That was about 12 or 13. I was probably about 10 or 11 when he was showing us the box that interfered with the TV, but I ended up getting my license just right around 13 years old, and it's been a lifelong delight ever since.
Wow, that's an interesting story there. I started off shortwave listening on one of those big old Zenith radios too. Boy, those things could sure pull in the signals. Back then, of course, it was AM, and that's really what lit the fire under me to get my license. And I was about 16 years old. You may have started a little bit earlier than me, but Ted, you still got some of those old radios, don't you?
I've got a few of them. But I'm wondering, the Zenith, was that a transoceanic, or was it like a floor model Zenith that you were listening on?
You just named it. It brought it back. It was a transoceanic. He had it up on the bookshelf. It was huge, but it was portable. And that's what
those things were very popular back then. And then a lot of people had them, and they were great receivers. Matter of fact, they're still a pretty fair receiver by today's standards.
Well, I don't know I'm not sure what the transoceanic was. I probably have seen it, but the one I started on, it was a floor model. That thing was like 4 feet tall and 3.5 feet wide, big round dial in the middle, and it sure did good. So Riley, you that sparked your interest there, and so what about any Elmers? Anybody help you there, or you just figured it out on your own?
Yeah, he took me over to see a ham operator's house, Grady Horton, and then another friend of his, Joe Galt. And when I saw those rigs, that's pretty impressive to a person that age. And about that same time, he helped me order a night kit space spanner from Allied Radio. I think it was like $22 or something. And I built that and heard ham operators, and then started to learn the code. And Joe Galt, W4WZ, one of the people that taught me the code, I still have a CW schedule with him on 40 meters every Thursday. He's 91. He's lightning fast on CW, and we talk all the time. He's still very involved in radio and building things and so forth. But I made lifelong friends from that, and got the novice license. And I had an old Johnson Challenger and an SX110 receiver. And looking back in those old logbooks, which I still have, I made hundreds and hundreds of contacts, and I just don't see how, given the way that equipment worked. I mean, compared to what we're used to today. But we sure got a lot of use out of it. I recently had a Challenger and an SX110, and just I was looking at that and operating it, made a few contacts, but I just never could figure out how I could make that many contacts, 300 or 400 in a year with that type of equipment. But we did it. That's what we were used to, and to us, that was state of the art.
Well, I think sometimes we look at those old rigs, we hook them up, and we're kind of like, how do we do this? I mean, this doesn't sound. I hooked a Hot Water 101 up the other day and had it on, and I was thinking, but then it hit me. It just got me. I thought, you know what? All the caps are dried out in this thing, and the tubes are not. They probably got gas in them, and they're not really running the way they did when we had them. Because I remember, some of this stuff. I mean, it really sounded good, And the other day, I just hooked up a pair of Drake Twins and compared it to an ICOM transceiver, and I mean, they were neck to neck. I mean, except as you go up in frequency, the Twins get just a little deaf, But then I've got gassy tubes in those things, so if I replaced everything, I'm wondering if they wouldn't just blow you away. I don't know.
Well, those Twins were certainly state of the art. I had a set of those. I loved it. I had it for about 15 years. Wish I'd kept them. But in collecting so much gear, you have to thin it out sometimes, and some things I've sold I wish I had kept. But I had the Drake Twins for years, and they were excellent rigs.
So, Riley, let's talk a little about you. Right before you went in to work with the FCC there, you took the job of special counsel. So that's the legal part. And I don't remember now if you told me you were a lawyer or attorney, one or the other. I can't remember which it was.
Well, I told you the difference between a lawyer and an attorney. Maybe I should repeat that, but I'm a lawyer. Okay. A lawyer is somebody that went to law school and worked in a legal profession. An attorney is somebody that went to law school and never got over it. So I would prefer to be called a lawyer. All
right. So you're a lawyer. You got that's what you I guess went to school for and became a lawyer. And then of course the FCC came along. How did you get hooked up with the FCC?
Well, the amateur radio interest led to a job at the radio station there in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It was an AM station, WRHI, and I worked there on Friday nights and Sundays and Sunday evenings usually, and just had an interest in all the technical parts of that too. And after law school, I was still an active ham operator, but during the third year of law school, the FCC came around interviewing, and I had a cousin practicing law in Columbia, South Carolina, and he had offered to have me come down and join him, and the FCC had given me an offer. So I talked to him about it, and he said, well, if you want to do divorces and sewer easements and speeding tickets and DUIs, come on and come with me. But the FCC might be a lot more interesting. So I went to the FCC planning to stay 3 years, but I had very interesting people to work for, very interesting cases, and worked on a lot of interference in the land mobile and public safety services. And it was enforcement oriented, but it was mainly focused on land mobile and public safety. I did do some amateur cases in those early days, But if you remember the era of the 70s, late 70s, paging was taking off and land mobile was taking off, and almost all our resources were put into that. And amateur radio sort of went by the wayside for about 12 years there. I guess from about 86 to about 98, there wasn't very much done in the amateur radio. So I worked a lot with the Gettysburg office because they had a big licensing facility there. And I eventually transferred up there to do land mobile enforcement because most of it was done with that office anyway. And then when Richard Lee became bureau chief for the Enforcement Bureau, a letter from the League came in, one of many letters complaining about the lack of amateur enforcement. And Lee had been was an ex-Marine, and he asked me to give him the background on it. And I told him that service had been neglected for 12 years, and there were a lot of problems there, and it just hadn't gotten the attention because of resources. And he said, well, we can't have 600,000 or 700,000 people feeling like they're not getting their money's worth from the FCC or not getting coverage because they are licensed. So I'm going to see if I can put somebody on it. So about a month later, he said that he hadn't been able to get anywhere with it. Would I mind doing it? And I said I would love to do it as long as I could do it out of the Gettysburg office. I didn't want to move back to D.C. So that was in about November of 98. And we started looking at all the complaints that had come in through the OOs and from all the field offices and everything. And it was sad how little had been done. And so we just started one day with a few warning letters, and it got 99% support from the amateur community. And that's what it takes. You know, you can have 100 people doing enforcement, but if the people that you're working with don't buy into it, that's not going to help you. But it just seemed to be very successful, and partly because nothing had been done for 12 years. Anything we did was a dramatic improvement.
Well, I really don't remember a lot of the problems you're talking about. I got my license in the 60s, and of course I went off in the military in the late 60s, early 70s. Probably was not real active then, but my understanding is, and I read some articles where you had talked about it. Back then, I think that there were some hams who felt like their jamming and harassment of other people was constitutionally protected, and it was a freedom of speech is what I'm reading here. So did you actually have people that felt like they had the right to do that?
Well, I don't think their thought went that deeply or that sophisticated. I think they were just the type of person that you remember from the fourth grade. There was always one or two. And you meet them later in life, and they haven't changed much from the fourth grade. They're just contrarians. A lot of them are bitter. They don't like to see people having fun, and they just try to screw up the system. And if the rules said they could do A, B, and C, they'd want to do D, E, and F. And they just hide behind. A lot of it is hiding behind all the amateur equipment, the anonymity of the microphone. You know, when single sideband came out, people said that would be the end of amateur radio, to have a mode that doesn't even have a carrier. I don't think anything would be the end of amateur radio if the microphone didn't kill it. Nothing will.
Well, I remember when it came out, and we were on AM, and people were calling them slop buckets, and if they should go up above, I forget what it was, 3,800 or somewhere. I don't know, but you know, it sure changed. I mean, nowadays, I mean, that's the thing to have, isn't it? I mean, technology has improved so much, I think. Like you were talking about a few minutes ago, when you were young and had that vintage radio equipment, it's a wonder how we made so many contacts with it. Nowadays, you buy a transceiver and hook that thing to the antenna, you're going to talk anywhere in the world, just like you're next door.
Well, you can. In fact, when I was talking about the Challenger and the SX-110, the antenna I had was a Gotham vertical. You probably remember the Gotham company. And I had that nailed to a rose trellis in the backyard, and I didn't even know about radials or anything. And I didn't have an SWR meter, but I seemed to get out and make some quite exciting contacts. Somebody loaned me an SWR meter once, and I saw how bad it was, and I never was able to get out much again. Maybe a lot of it was psychological. But sideband, it was a wonderful thing, and I had the old Johnson Valiant, and I'd have to get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to work DX. But with when I got into sideband with the HT37, You could just work at any time with just 100 watts. You could get all over the world. It was just an amazing change.
I'd like to just pose a question to you, and I don't want to be like the bearer of negativity or bad news, but what do you think is happening in terms of amateur radio? If we go back and look back, say when you first started doing enforcement, and where we are now. The other night I had on 75 meters, and I was just going up and down the dial. I was listening to a bunch of guys talk, and they were carrying on, and the conversation seemed to be pretty normal. And then all of a sudden, they just broke into the most foul four-letter language you can imagine. It's like they were trying to out-cuss each other. And but there was nothing in the conversation that seemed to support the need for any kind of exclamatory language. It was just casual four-letter words, Okay, so I'm thinking, oh, well, I don't understand this bunch, so I go down the dial a few KCs, and I find another bunch of guys talking. And it's not too long here. They're rattling off the same stuff, and I'm like, What's going on here? I mean, I remember there used to be those frequencies, like one frequency on 75 or 80, and you tune it in, and you could expect just about anything, okay? Now it seems like, as I'm scanning down the dial, finding probably roundtables or QSOs of groups of hams, that seems to be becoming commonplace, and I wondered what's happening here. I fail to. I guess I'm not grasping it. I don't understand it. I mean, are we just getting a lower breed of ham on the air, or is it that society itself has changed to the point where people feel this is acceptable?
Well, I don't think it's amateur radio driven. It's the nature of our times. If you go to a shopping mall, park at the beach, or anywhere else, everybody uses language now that as kids we weren't allowed to use. We just didn't talk that way. But it's commonplace now. You can hear kids in a shopping mall talking to each other to the extent they're not texting. If you hear them talking, this language is just different. Our standards are lower in that sense. And amateur radio is a cross section of society, and we want it to be, because we want it to be appealing to a cross section of society and help us regain our foothold, or at least maintain our foothold in science and technology. People are more rude now. They assume offenses. You do somebody a favor sometimes, they assume that you're offending them. You see people arguing over parking spaces in a mall when there's hundreds of parking spaces available. People are just easily offended. They assume an offense. They're much more profane. It's just a sign of the times. Now, maybe that's a pendulum. I don't know. I grew up in a Navy family, so my vocabulary, most of that in the first grade, I couldn't use, but I didn't use it in public. I learned not to use it in public. But people are just different now. They don't care in that sense, and that's going to be reflected in amateur radio to the extent that it's a cross section.
Well, there was a time when broadcast radio, the language being used on broadcast radio, especially on a lot of these morning shows, was far worse than anything that you would hear on amateur radio. And I heard the argument, well, if they can do it on broadcast radio, how come it can't be done on ham radio? And of course the question is, well, why would you want it on ham radio? It's offensive enough on broadcast, but it seems like broadcast radio preceded ham radio in becoming the source of gutter talk, if that makes any sense at all.
It did, and you have the shock jocks. And you have the Supreme Court rulings where after 10 o'clock at night, during the safe harbor times, you can do say virtually anything. And it did start with broadcast radio, and the commission lost a few rounds in court over language. And so the amateur operators know that they can basically do, as far as language goes, almost whatever they want. Not to the extent they think they can, but they do almost what they want after in those hours. And of course it's going to be before that in the evenings, too early, but theoretically there are little if any standards after about 9 or 10 in the evening. But the shock jocks, I think, started the trend, and it just and we can't do until the Supreme Court until we get different rulings from the Supreme Court, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. We'll just have to wait for society to change.
Well, I guess that was the question, because I know that we had conversations before in the past, and one thing that, because if the average ham sitting here that hasn't been around a whole lot of this, you're shocked by it. It's like, whoa, and the first thing that crosses a lot of folks' mind is, that guy's going to get nailed by the FCC, sure as a world, But then when you get down to the reality of it, the FCC can only do what's enforceable, and if whatever they're doing is not necessarily enforceable. But let me ask this question. Today, if an amateur is on amateur frequencies and talking to someone else, and let's say they're using the four-letter word that starts with F frequently, is that considered a violation today, or is it something, because of the Supreme Court, the FCC kind of likes to have, or they have to turn a deaf ear to it to some degree?
Well, during the safe harbor hours, they have to turn a safe ear to it. Technically, it's not legal during other hours if it's in the obscene or indecent context. But that's very hard to wade through, and there are hundreds and hundreds of cases in that area, and it's just never been resolved, really. I don't know what we can do about it.
So Riley, just a question: is it permissible for hams to talk like it during certain hours? I mean, are there hours just like on commercial radio?
Well, is it the obscenity and indecency standards for amateur radio are the same as those that apply to commercial radio. So what you hear commercial radio, you can say that, you can hear that on the amateur bands.
Didn't know that.
That doesn't necessarily make it a real great idea.
No, just because you have a right to do something doesn't mean it's right to do it. And some people will take full advantage and skirt the edge, and they want the shock effect. You know those types, and they do tend to hang out on certain frequencies on 75 meters and on 20 meters. And I've always thought that maybe there are a couple of frequencies that cause brain damage, probably one on 20 meters and one on 75. Maybe those are the ones that RF energy causes brain damage. But there's the bottom line is how much tax dollars do you want to use to try to regulate stupidity? Stupidity can't be regulated. The best rule writers in the world have told me that you just can't regulate stupidity because their rules are underwritten by a foundation, assuming a foundation of common sense and responsibility. And you have idiots, you have idiot lawyers, idiot politicians, and you have idiot ham operators as well. Fortunately, in our service, it's a minuscule percentage. We don't like it. We're very conscious of enforcement in the amateur service. We're very much self-policing, and I think we're offended by it more when we hear people like that. But just can't regulate stupidity. And some of these people use thousands and thousands of dollars of radio equipment to act like juveniles on candy talkies. I've never quite understood that. But you can't understand them. If you could understand them, you would be as stupid as they are.
Ronnie, let me ask you a question. Actually, I was looking in the chat room here. There's a couple that are coming in, and hopefully, maybe Ted will take a call or two toward the end of Riley's discussion here. But I know one of the things I wanted to ask about. Even today, there's a frequency on 20 meters, 14313. It's pretty bad. Is the FCC actually going after people there? Are they hard to kill? Why does that go on so long?
Well, they are going after them. In fact, just the other day in the Daily Digest, you'll see that a $22,000 fine was upheld on one of the 313 operators. For some reason, that frequency draws a lot of people who can best be described as several French fries short of a Happy Meal. And I'm not sure why, unless that particular frequency causes brain damage. But the FCC has a lot of responsibilities, a lot of frequencies to cover, everything from RF radio interference to fraud and the Universal Service Fund and net neutrality and all that stuff. And it will get to them. It's just a question of when. Now, it's not. You may think that it's not as fast as it used to think. It's because you just don't hear as much about it until the actual actions are carried out. When we started the amateur program in 1998 and 1999, marching orders were to publish everything we did and let the public know that we were out there in the amateur service again. And that was fun. And then, of course, the Privacy Act came on scene and began to ratchet it down a little bit more and a little bit more. So now you only see final actions. But what you see in the Daily Digest or in the amateur section, amateur enforcement section of the web pages of the commission under the Enforcement Bureau, that's the tip of the iceberg. And one thing I would point out is that let me go backtrack 1 second. In the language case, in the worst case of the language, usually that's not the only thing they're doing. Usually there are rule violations associated with it. But getting back to the forfeitures, the forfeitures you'll notice are huge. I mean, a $22,000 forfeiture for amateur radio. Do people really want to go down that road? I mean, you have to be pretty dumb to think you want to go down that road. And that forfeiture, or some degree of it, will be collected by the Justice Department. And so you don't see a lot of actions in number, but the actions are severe in penalty. And that's what people have to keep in mind. And it will eventually clear it out.
So let me ask Ted a question here, and then Riley, you can follow up with the answer there. But Ted, have you ever been on a frequency and you are operating, and then somebody comes on and says, "Hey Ted, why don't you guys go ahead and move? We've had a net on this frequency for the last 48 years." What do you do, Ted?
Hang on a second here. I turned the mic off because we were having a little bit of a problem with Skype, so I didn't want to. Then I forgot to turn it back on. Generally, I don't know. I mean, that's a weird question from the standpoint that I have never given it any thought. If I were on a frequency and somebody came on and said, "Hey, we've had a net on here," or they don't even have to say that. If they just say, "We normally start a net on here at, say, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock," I just usually sign out and move somewhere else. If somebody else is on, I say, "Hey, let's go up, wherever and try to find another frequency." I see. I don't understand the mentality of saying, "No, I'm going to stay right here. Doggone it, you don't own this frequency." I don't get that. I really don't. I hear people do it, but and there has been some occasions where there's been some folks that I thought were they just hassle you. They'd come on and they didn't have a net starting or anything. They're just trying to hassle you. But still, what's the harm of moving? I mean, I would just say move. And the thing of it is, if you did have a net set up, something that you did every week, and you happened on the frequency, and there's a couple of guys talking, and you told them you normally have a net on this frequency, wouldn't you feel a whole lot better about everything if they just obliged and said, "Hey, let's go dig another well"? I mean, I don't know.
I feel the same way you do, Ted. I've always moved, and I have been on their frequency. But I heard Riley gave a discussion at one of the Hamfest one time, and I kind of picked up on this. Riley, you had a presentation you gave, and you talked about that fact about them owning the frequency. You want to share with us your feelings on that?
Yeah. This illustrates human nature at its best. In 90% of the cases, when a net comes on, people will cheerfully move because we have thousands and thousands of discrete frequencies. And I've heard people talking in a normal queue, so well, we better sign out. Now it's about time for the sideband net to come on, and they do it. And it works beautifully in 90 to 95%. You have a few cases where the net comes in, get off frequency, this is our net, we've had this net for 30 years, and it's time for the net. It's just the way that it's said or the way that it's requested. And have you ever noticed that when you pull up to a yield sign on the interstate, if you go flying up there, or on any major highway, if you go flying up there and you put your brakes on and like you can't wait to get out there in the lane, people will close the gap to keep you from getting on the highway. But if you sort of ease up there, like, man, I'd really like to get out of here, I'd like to get out in the lane, and you're driving politely, people will slam on brakes to let you on the road. It's just nature. Now, some of these things are the net's fault, by the way they ask it and the way they just come storming in there. They don't have a right to that frequency, no matter how many years they have been on it. But common sense dictates that they should be allowed to have a net on that frequency if it's a long-standing net, or just, not even a long-standing net, because the system works better that way. It's just like when you leave a football game or some big stadium event. Normally, you let everybody lets the opposite lane go, and then they'll go, and then that person will let somebody go, and they'll let somebody go. You don't have to do that. You could block everybody and just drive on out and not let anybody in your lane. But the system works a whole lot better. Everybody gets home a lot sooner if everybody cooperates and acts politely about it. It's the same way with the nets. But there were some thought out there that the nets have a right to that frequency, and they don't actually. Most nets realize that. But it works beautifully in, like I say, 90 to 95% of the cases. People just allow the net to operate and move a few kilohertz. After all, we have thousands of discrete frequencies, and there's plenty of room for everybody.
Well, is there any, well, maybe you just tell me, you may not want to talk about any cases that may be unethical. Any highlights or anything you want to talk about, during your tenure at the FCC?
Well, getting back to the net thing, there was a net on 40 meters that just drew interference left and right every night. And when you listen to that net, you could see why. It was a net control that was just so offensive. And I heard the net start one night, and the net started up. The net control so well, we'll try to have a net tonight unless we draw a lot of idiots interfering with us. Well, those are fighting words, and you can conduct yourself so that you draw interference in some cases. And I saw a lot of that, but most of the nets that were well run, polite nets, and ran as best they could. They didn't have any problem. You're always going to have a few, like I said, who are going to be idiots because you can't regulate stupidity, and they'll try to drive a net crazy. But there was one net that had an agreement among its members that when that happened, they would just say, okay, we're going to switch to frequency B, and they would stop. And they'd come on about a half hour later, and there was no frequency B, but they knew that the people that were interfering with them were going crazy trying to find them somewhere on the band. And that worked so well. But as far as highlights, I could talk all night about highlights. But the one thing that sticks in my mind is when I first got the amateur radio job, I wasn't all that active. I made probably less than 25 contacts a year, usually checking into nets. I like to check into nets, and nets serve a great purpose, and we need them in amateur radio. And I try to check into them and support them. But these cases, so when I got the job, I was much more active, and I was listening around in the bands a lot more. And some of the cases of interference and just idiocy really aggravated me, and I couldn't believe that with all the privileges we had in our service of power and mode and activities, whether it's PSK 31 or DX chasing or whatever, that people would abuse the privileges like that. Some of these cases would aggravate me all weekend. And one Friday I was in the office, and there was a particular case of deliberate interference, and it involved language from some fellow down in Georgia. I don't remember the name, but I knew that case was going to aggravate me all weekend. And I decided to try giving him a call, because sometimes dealing with somebody one-on-one goes a long way towards straightening out the problem. So I decided rather than stew about it all weekend, I would call him. And I called down on Friday afternoon late as his wife answered the phone. And I told her who it was, and I'd like to speak to the radio operator there, so-and-so. And she said, well, what's this about? So against my better judgment, I told her that we'd had a lot of complaints about interference in language on interference to a net from this operator, and I wanted to discuss it with him and see if we could get it resolved. And she said, there was a pause for about a full 30 seconds, and she said, well, I'll tell you what, he gets home at 6, but you won't need to call him because I can guarantee you after about 6:15 tonight, you will never have this problem again. So I didn't call him back, and we never heard him again. We never heard anything from him or about him. I don't know whatever happened, fella. But sometimes the wife or girlfriend standing in the radio room or getting a package of tapes in the mail turns out to be a very useful enforcement tool. And we never heard from that guy again. And we never had that problem again.
Well, I know that you've been targeted a number of times just for doing your job, and what I mean is I was listening in the Nashville area here on a net that I think it was on the 6-7 machine. I'm not sure, but anyways, and there was always a couple of guys that were just hecklers that would check into the net using your call sign. So you had won some hearts in the process of making the hobby better.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got some amazing DX cards, too, from stations I didn't work, somebody using my call sign. I even heard one guy using my call sign one night, but I couldn't get back to him. But one night I was listening on 75 meters to some activity like you were just discussing. And just listening, I wasn't even on the air, although I did have my equipment on. And one of the fellows very sarcastically said, well, I'm going to go ahead and identify this as K4 so-and-so Riley in case you happen to be listening, Mr. Enforcer. So since I was listening, I knew this was a once in a 100-year opportunity. So I just flipped on the microphone and I said, thank you very much for identifying. We always appreciate it when you do this because we're always listening. This is K4ZDH. And I didn't hear anything for a full 5 minutes, nothing, no signals. And finally, some fella came on the frequency and said, I think even the static's gone away. There have been times that are fun. You know, you can't take yourself too seriously. We're all in this together. And 99% of us are rolling in the same direction. We have to put up with idiots just like every other service and profession and hobby does.
So, Riley, do you get involved in other interference? You know, like the plasma TVs that cause a lot of interference for ham radio operators. Is the FCC doing anything about those kind of things?
Yes, they do. The Office of Engineering Technology handles cases like that. There's all kinds of RF junk out there. There might be a circuit board in a new washing machine, a plasma TV. They're for that. They're notorious for that. And so the FCC, not as fast as it should, but it works with factors to get that straightened out. And if you watch the Daily Digest, and you can subscribe to that by going to the FCC.gov website, getting the Daily Digest and putting your email in there, you can get it every day. Now that's a lot of stuff. The FCC does an incredible amount of work, as you'll see from the Daily Digest. But you see a big sprinkling of cases in there of type certification cases and RF problems, equipment that causes interference, grow lights. There's just all kinds of RF junk out there, and it is the FCC's job to stop that if it exceeds certain limits, if it radiates past a certain point.
No, I saw something in an article this past week about, I think it was Home Depot was selling some of their, I don't know if it was like grow lights. It was a very powerful light. It was more of a commercial light, but they were selling it to consumers. And I didn't know that there was a difference between a light you sell consumers and what is licensed to sell to, to commercial. So obviously there's a difference in the amount of power there. And I guess that's a way of keeping some of the interference out of the homes.
Yeah, I haven't seen that case. I'll look for that. But there are certification standards, and some of these standards, you self-cert to them. And the commission will approve something and then later test it and find out it doesn't meet those standards, either because the standards were fudged in the beginning or because of poor manufacturing practices afterwards. But by following the digest, you can see what they're doing in that area. But it's, more and more we're dependent on Wi-Fi and RF generally, and there's more and more RF junk out there. Of course, you're all familiar with the BPL issue. The broadband over power line, and how scary that was, and how sloppily that was done by the commission. And the commission lost in court. They got their head handed to them on a platter, and they should have lost. They were trying to railroad that thing through. So, if you're not familiar with that,
yeah, is there any broadband over power happening in the U.S.?
I don't know if there is, it's very little, and you just don't hear about it anymore. It was overcome by technology, and that's what basically did that in. Motorola had made this device to notch out the amateur frequencies. It was very cheap, very easy to put on, and so they could have done it if they used that device. But they got into a war, and it just didn't work. But I don't hear anything about it anymore, and I think it's because the technology is far advanced beyond the BPL concepts at that time.
Question in the chat room, wanting to know if the Justice Department does follow up on fines. I guess they place fines on people. Do they collect, or do they let that sit for a while?
Yes, what happens is the commission issues the forfeiture. When you see a forfeiture order, and just pick one out and read it sometime. Take the $22,000 that was issued to Guernsey up in Michigan, who's had dozens and dozens of chances to do it right and just insist on not doing it. Read the Guernsey case. It came out in Daily Digest just the other day. Might have been towards the end of the week or last week. But it's Parchment, Michigan. I think it's KZ8O or something like that. But it shows the collection requirements or the payment requirements. Now, if that isn't paid within the time that's allowed, it's referred to the Justice Department, and they pick up that case just like they would pick up a case of student loan that was severely delinquent or anything like that. They pick up that case and they'll pursue it, particularly the cases like we're saying. And when they get a collection order, they can collect it either through seizing your tax return, and people don't realize this, but also by putting a lien on your house. They will collect that, and it may take longer than you would think, but they do get collected, and you just don't want to go down that road. Nobody wants to deal with it. If I had a letter coming to the house that I owed $22,000, I would have to run, I think. For my life out of this house.
So Ted, have you paid all your bills?
I mean, all the FCC fines that was levied against me here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I took out a loan. I had to sell all my ham equipment, and
Well,
I know that's not true. You got a big cache of it there. Hey.
Well, here's one thing to.
I've never. Go ahead.
One thing to consider too is now the way the rules are written, there is the red light rule, which means that if you owe the FCC money and a collection order's been issued, you cannot get your license renewed. You can't get a new license. You can't get the license you have renewed unless you pay it. The FCC is not allowed by law to grant that license. So these people who are playing around with the system here, the chickens are going to come home to roost before long.
I was going to ask this question. I had heard something, and I don't know if this is true or rumor, but if a fella has a ham license and he's severely behind in child support, is there some connection in that can be done to him legally? And I'd heard this, but I didn't know if it was just rumor or if it was fact.
No, I don't think so. Now, when I mentioned the collection order, if there is a collection order from another agency on a different topic, I don't know if the red light rule would apply there. I'm thinking that it's only FCC forfeitures, but I'm not sure. I would have to check that out. But what they were probably thinking was that if somebody submitted or filed a collection order that was final, that the commission wouldn't be allowed to grant that license. I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I've never heard of that.
Well, it was just a strange thing that I had heard, and I thought, what's the connection? I would be more apt to believe that if a person, owed the IRS a lot of money, maybe they would not be able to get a renewal that way, but I don't know. These things are kind of, ambiguous.
Yes.
Got a question from the chat room.
Federal.
Yeah, question here, Raleigh. Well, two questions. One, how to report bootlegging of your own call. I guess somebody must hate him. I guess if you know who it is, you just...
What you do now is the FCC has a new complaint filing procedure, and you can see it if you go to the FCC's website on how to file complaints. And it's a very good procedure now. You fill out all the information, you get a case number, you put in your contact number, and those complaints are reviewed and sent to the appropriate person. Now, in amateur radio, would go to Laura Smith. She would weed those out and work with the Field Operations Bureau on that. So, our Enforcement Bureau. So, what that person needs to do is if you have a log of when that happens, that would be good. Or just what facts you have, give that to the commission, and you can make a detailed complaint. You'll get a case number back, and they will take it from there. But you should report it.
Yeah, another question is, does the FCC confiscate equipment? Well, I know they do it sometimes, but what's the percentage of you guys taking the equipment? And what do you do with it when you take it, man? Do you guys that are hams get to keep it and use it?
Well, they generally don't take equipment. They want to change that so that they can seize equipment, and I think they should. You don't hear of it unless it's an unlicensed station. Now, you will probably hear of it where you have these people who aren't abiding by the collection orders, and if they stay on the air. But generally, they don't. If it's unlicensed, though, you can expect that to be gone, and if the U.S. Marshals come in on unlicensed stations, unlicensed operations, they normally like to leave with equipment. Now, it's auctioned off somewhere. Nobody gets to use it. It's just auctioned off with all the confiscated things that they get, cars and everything else, I guess.
I'd like to ask a question, and this is kind of a confusing question for a lot of folks. And I don't know, this may not be in your backyard, but Part 15 devices. There's, you have people that want to play CD players and they want to pick them up on the car radio. You have other people that want to put a transmitter in their house and hook up their XM receiver so they can pick it up all over the house. And but there's rules about Part 15. And I'm just curious as to is it a thing that's measured by emission, or is it power output, length of antenna? I've heard all of this, and I've read some of the rules, but as you know, Riley, I'm not all that bright. So I was never been able to be able, because I work in broadcast radio as an engineer. I have people ask me about this all the time, and I really don't know what to tell them. I generally say, well, if it's just on your property, it's confined to your property, and your neighbors can't hear it, then I would say you don't have a problem. But I don't know how. I mean, how do you do something like that? I mean, RF seems to just travel. It doesn't. You can't stop it at a specific point.
Well, it's under Part 15, which is very complicated, by the way. And if you ever meet anybody that claims to fully understand it, walk away, because they can't be right. But you can have unlicensed signals within limits. It has to be within certain limits, so many dBU, certain distance, and so forth. Now, while it's true you can have it in your house, and if the neighbors can't hear it, there's not going to be a problem. However, if you amplify that or put your antenna on a tower so that it's going out way beyond that, then you run into Part 15 standard. You run afoul of the standards in Part 15. Remember when not too long after Sirius came out, there was Sirius and the other before they merged. I can't think of what it was now. But anyway, there was a case, XM. Yeah, there was a case where one of the Sirius providers was way over power. and they got dinged for that. I can't remember the name of the case, but the complaints started coming in when somebody would pull up in the adjacent lane, and the car next to them had Sirius on it. They would hear it on their radio. That's how they got wind of it. So they do enforcement. They do enforce it. You can have these unlicensed transmissions within standards, and it's all right there in Part 15. But it's best to talk to the commission to try to understand it, because I don't think anybody can really read them and understand it. But the
reason why I ask is, the reason why I ask is because there is something alluded to an antenna that's limited to like 50 inches or something like that, or 30 inches, and then the input can only be 1/10 of a watt to the, but all that's confusing because, as you know, 1/10 of a watt on a 55-inch whip, if it's high enough up in the air, it's gonna cover some territory.
Well, that's why they have the antenna standards and so forth, to try to predict the range and coverage of those signals. Now, in the grow light cases, lights, anything else can put out interference, and a lot of things do. You can walk around your house with a transistor radio on a vacant part of the AM band and hear interference from dimmers, washing machines, motors, everything else. But the grow light cases, you're seeing them because they are interfering too far. They're going way too far than they should. The range of the interference is too far under the standards. And so that's why they're dinging those. And so I don't know how they draw up the standards, but it wouldn't be just wattage. It would be type of antenna and so forth. But keep in mind, a device like a grow light doesn't have an antenna. It just becomes a radiating device. Now, so you're going to have two different areas. You're going to have areas where a device is intended to radiate, such as the Wi-Fi unit in your house. You're going to have a device where it's not intended to radiate, but it does put out, it does radiate RF energy, but that's okay within certain limits. But beyond that limit, then it's not legal. And so that's why the standards are so complicated. Some devices are intended to radiate, and some of them are unintended radiators. Let me shut this call off, please.
That's probably someone calling you that's seeing you on here and wants to yell at you.
No, it looks like my daughter here. That's
okay. Hey, Riley, another question from the chat room. What are your thoughts on the 147.435 repeater in LA? I was out in LA in October, and I didn't take a radio with me, so I don't know a lot going on with that thing. Is that something you know about?
Well, anytime I get asked about a repeater in California, it's usually one repeater, which used to be known as the W6NUT repeater. I don't know if that's the one they're referring to.
Was that a vanity call?
Yeah. No, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
There was a repeater there in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area. It was W6NUT that drew complaints from all over the world. California has a lot of tourists, and a lot of ham operators that would be out there would hear it and complain to the FCC. And eventually it was sold and the call sign changed. I think a lot of the characters stayed the same. A lot of it wasn't illegal. It was just downright stupid. And there wasn't a lot we could do about it. A lot of it was illegal, and a number of people got dinged, but I hadn't heard anything about that case in many years. But the original owner once asked me, he said, I'll try to get this straightened out, but if I clamp down on my users, they're going to go to other repeaters, and wouldn't you rather have all the fruitcakes out here on one repeater where you knew where they were? And that was a good question. I thought about that question a lot. But that's probably what they're talking about. I don't know the status of that today. I know that right before I had retired, a fellow bought it and was trying to straighten it out. It may have been sold again. But at least one of the owners was really trying to straighten it out. I don't know if that was ever possible or not.
I think that was kind of the theory of several of people here in Nashville, because we had a local 220 repeater that was like that, and everybody would say, well, at least they're over there.
Yeah, and you don't want to do something and force a few of them to all the other repeaters so that everybody has a problem.
You know, when I was a novice 50 years ago, oh, I got a postcard. Ted, you probably did too. I got a postcard from an official observer. And back then, being 16 years old, that's just like the FCC writing you a letter, you know it? And I think I was like 50 cycles or something out of the band. Actually, I think I do remember getting a letter from the FCC once for something. I mean, I'm not a real bad guy, but hey, I think I did get a letter from them once or something, and I had to send them a letter in triplicate or something stating that it wouldn't happen again. But that's, you know, that's all that happened. And I guess back then, you know, 16-year-olds are going to kind of screw up every now and then.
Well, yeah, and there was a different respect, a better respect for authority in those days, and a letter like that would scare you to death. Our times are a little different. But getting back to repeater, one thing the FCC is not going to do is babysit repeaters. A repeater is nothing more than the repeater owner's radio station. It's like leaving the back door to your house open, leaving your station on all the time, and somebody comes in and gets on there and breaks some rules, and you're expecting the FCC to do something about it. It's the repeater owner's station. He's responsible for it. The FCC is not going to babysit it. The FCC will help you if you're trying to get somebody off of it. But at a certain point, they're going to say, shut it down. And of course, it seems like all repeater owners, or too many repeater owners, think that their repeater is sacred. But the fact of the matter is, in many, many cases, if a repeater shuts down, you know what will happen? Nothing. They'll just go to another repeater. And so that is the repeater owner's station. It's his total responsibility. And he's got to shut it down if he can't maintain it. And a lot of repeater owners are finding this out the hard way, I think. Now, I think that as digital technology takes hold, it'll be much easier to keep undesirables off of repeaters. I think with D-Star and some of the equivalent technologies, that'll be less of a problem. But it always surprised me the number of repeater operators that turned the thing on, did very little monitoring of it. Very little control of it, but expected the FCC to solve all the problems on the repeater. And it's just another station. They're not going to do it.
So, Ted, did you ever get any official observer cards?
I remember now, if I think back far enough, I got a write-up from the FCC of all things, and it was like, and Riley, correct me on this, it used to be that when you signed out, you had to cross-sign. Is that correct? I mean, you had to, in other words, you had to do the call sign of the other station as well as yours, you know, in signing out, you know. So I would have to say W5KUB, this is WB8PUM signing. And I didn't do that. And I got a letter, and they had a script, they have all the whole conversation. And at the end, I did not. What had happened was I actually did sign out, but then somebody asked me a question, and I jumped back in, and I made a comment, and then I didn't sign out again. So they wrote. Does that sound right, Riley? I mean, it was a long time ago. I just barely remember the whole thing.
Yeah, I think in the older days, you did have to give both call signs, as I remember. I'm not totally sure of that. I may have that confused with the requirement that you identified wasn't there a requirement to identify to beginning and ending of transmissions or something? I may have.
Yeah, it seems like that, yeah, because it was one of these things where I signed out, you know, and then this guy asked me a question. He's like, "Are you going to be there tomorrow night?" And I'm going to say, "Yeah, I'll be there." And I did sign my call. I did say a WB8POM sign, you know, but I didn't cross sign. So that was the technicality. And I remember sitting there thinking.
Did you get that as a official observer card or an FCC letter?
No, it was an FCC letter, and I had to answer it. I had to give an answer. I wanted to say, "Do you have anything else to do in life other than this?" You know. But I didn't. I wrote a respectful letter back and just kind of bit my tongue, thinking, you know, maybe the guy was bored that night, needed something to do. I don't know. I don't know.
You know, Ted, you must be a criminal then, just like I am. You know, I got that same thing, a letter from the FCC, and hey, I specifically remember I had to fill out my response to them in triplicate. It was specified I had to do it in triplicate, and I had to promise why it wouldn't happen again. And you know, Man, I can remember back, get the old typewriter out, 3 pieces of paper, carbon paper in there. Man, things have changed a lot, haven't they?
Yeah, we better
I guess what?
We better watch WB8PUM. He does sound like a radical there.
Yeah.
He did really sound. They all say that, Ted. Just kidding.
Hey, here's another
the
question.
Reason why I really did want to write back something sarcastic, but I felt, I don't know, I just had this gut feeling that, why bite the hand that feeds you? Because this same guy is going to be going after some nutcase that's going to be ruining it for everybody on a frequency some night. So, why make a comment like that? Although I felt that way. I kind of thought, well, this is just a little bit over the edge. But, rules back then were different than they are today.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here's a question. Riley, what are your thoughts about paper repeaters that are not on the air and preventing people who have the gear from getting repeater pairs? Like in Memphis, all the 2-meter frequencies are gone. You can't get a frequency. And I guess it's bad if people kind of sit on those frequencies and don't use them.
Well, you can get a repeater on that frequency. The FCC doesn't do frequency coordination. Repeater frequency coordinators only give recommendations. They do not give authority. They don't give licenses. And there are cases where repeater coordinators have protected someone on a frequency pair who doesn't really have a repeater on and who hasn't been active. And the rules say that if there's interference between 2 repeaters and one repeater is coordinated and the other one isn't, the one that is not coordinated has the burden of proof in that case of showing that it's not interfering. But if that repeater that he's alleged to be interfering with isn't on the air, that's a problem the coordinator has and better get straightened out, because I had numerous cases where we looked beyond the coordination. And the coordinator should be looking at that and withdrawing that recommendation if that repeater isn't on the air after a length of time, because the repeater coordinator doesn't own the frequency. They don't have any authority to do anything except recommend a frequency. So that should not keep somebody, a paper repeater, it should not keep somebody who wants to put on a legitimate repeater. And I would push that with the FCC, the league, and then whatever, because there are too many cases of that.
Yeah, here's a question from N2GYN. Why does a contester seem to be immune to law enforcement? They break many rules during contest. I haven't. Gee, when the contests are going, I usually just try to stay off of bands, man. Do you think the contesters don't operate very well?
Well, they're not immune from the rules, but they do get caught up in the enthusiasm, and it can be very aggravating to people on the frequency who aren't in the contest. And one alternative they have is the warp bands, of course. A lot of people don't realize that there are no contests on the warp bands. But it's not designed to give the contester immunity. It just seems that way. There's so much of a frenzy and a pileup and a hysterical calling. And a lot of it is from foreign stations. A lot of the really aggravating conduct is from foreign stations. So they're not immune. It's just a little harder to catch those people, I guess. And
so I didn't know that. Been a ham all these years. The WARC bands are not used for contests. Is that a gentleman's agreement, or is there some kind of rules in place?
It's a gentleman's agreement that 12, 17 meters, 30 meters, and I think I did say 17, but the warp bands, you just don't hear contests on those bands. And they're very good bands. A lot of people aren't on the warp bands, but they're excellent bands, especially 17 meters. But the question is, why are they immune to it? They aren't immune to it under the rules. It's just such a frenzy, a shark feeding frenzy. Where do you start? When you try to attack some of these problems. And it is annoying, it is aggravating, and there's an awful lot of contest. And I don't do contests. I get in contests a little bit just to pick up some new countries, something like that, or just to work a bunch of stations, maybe for a few hours, but that's about it. But you have people who stay in these contests the whole time. And of course, you have stations. You have 7 stations in a contest, so forth. I mean, there are a lot of big contesters around here in Pennsylvania. They're huge contest stations. They're very enthusiastic, very expensive and well-made stations. And it's just such a frenzy. There are some warning letters and actions against contesters. I think you just don't hear a lot about it because there's such a frenzy and there's so many of them. But they don't have any they don't have any.
I'm sorry. This is not really good duplex here. We get to talking, and I'm hearing you, and I hear a pause, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're done talking, and I jump in. But I'm sorry I interrupted. I was just going to say, during contests, the bands are usually jammed. I mean, they're just every as you're going up and down the dial, there's a contester every 3-4 KC. They're just going at it. So wouldn't that be a real difficult thing to try to enforce?
It would, and then you have split. You know, it's a problem when there's split operation because people aren't listening necessarily on the frequency they're transmitting on, and it's just a frenzy, just a free-for-all.
Let me grab another question.
I would equate it to Bike Week in Gettysburg when we have over 10,000 Harley Davidsons in town. Bike Week in July is a big event around here. And I'm sure the police think, well, where do we start? It's kind of analogous to that.
Okay, several questions coming in on the chat room. Hey, and Ted, you think we ought to open a phone line up here in a minute and just give somebody an opportunity to say hello to Riley?
Absolutely.
You want me to publish the special ham radio number? I can throw it on here real quick.
I was just looking for it here. Yes, go ahead.
I've got it. Let's see. There we go. I just, well, let's see. Well,
I've got one that's real easy to remember if they want to call in on. And it's area code. If this is different, if you want to publish a different one, that's fine. Or if you want to go with the original.
I've got the 813 number on the screen. And if you have another number, we can do that.
The only thing I was saying is that 813 number, for some reason, I don't know why, it has it has call waiting or something on it, and I can't shut it off. It just drives me crazy when the folks are calling while we're talking.
You know what? And you taught me to memorize that number. I don't think I can do another number.
Well, I've got one here that's, I don't know if it's going to be easy, but it's area code 615, which is the Nashville area code. And then it's 965. And then our frequency here on WTWW 5085.
All right, I will put one up on the screen here. And in the meantime, you might try to answer this. Riley, let's see. Let me scroll back up.
Let's give the number out over the air too, because people listening on shortwave cannot see the number on the screen, unless they've got video on their shortwave radio. It's 615-813-0173. That's 615-813-0173. And we'll give that number out again. If you've missed it this time around, we'll give it again. Just get a pencil and paper out or something so you can jot it down.
Okay. I've also got it here. I'm going to put it on our screen. I think I've got it here. Let me make sure. What in the world? I clicked on the wrong thing. There it is right there. Nope, that's not it. Okay, 615-965-5085, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
That's the other number. So.
Okay.
If we're on this one, call the other one, and then just let it ring, and we'll eventually get to you.
Okay. Hey Riley, I hear various FCC monitoring stations have been remoted. How accurate is that when they try to do the triangulation, is that pretty accurate at those distances, or do you guys have to move people in closer to really, zero in on people?
Well, no, they are triangulated there. I don't know what the number is today, but as at the time I was there was, I think, 13 antenna fields, and they were tied into Columbia, Maryland. And you can watch it on a big screen, and they can triangulate and find the location. I don't know how accurate it is classified, but
yeah.
It's very, very accurate, and a lot more accurate than you would think it is. But with the introduction of the I can't think of the name of the computer chip, but well over 10 or 15 years ago, they started closing some of the field offices, but what they didn't mention was they left the antenna fields there, and they're all tied into this beautiful monitoring facility in Columbia, Maryland. And that's what it's all automated. They can hear, they can get bearings on a signal that your ear can't detect. It's a very good system. There's only a couple of systems like it in the world.
Well, I figured they were pretty accurate, and I also figured it was probably classified. I mean, when we start sharing technology, that I can see how you could easily pinpoint it down to a specific city, but man, when you guys go down to the block and street level, that may be really getting accurate there. All right, so we're looking for callers. 615-965-5085. If you want to call in and say hello or ask Riley a question, we've opened the phone line up.
Well, Tom, getting back to the direction finding, they'll find you if they want to. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
I'm curious, does the commission monitor much? We got a caller here, so I'll hold my question, and we'll get somebody on the phone here. Hello, you're with us on Amateur Radio Roundtable. Hello, caller, are you there?
I think you're hearing ringing in your ears again.
No, hello there. For some reason they're not there. So, goodbye, caller. Go ahead and continue on. We'll wait and see if we get somebody else. Try on the other lines.
Let's see. There was another question. I'll see if I can find it here.
Let me just mash the button here real quick and test for dial tone. And I'm not getting dial tone, so I don't know what. I don't know.
Okay.
So evidently there is a problem with the phone hybrid. I'm seeing. Yeah, I don't know. Strange.
Well,
have David here take a look at this
maybe,
and see what the problem is.
Ted, is this another case where maybe you didn't pay the phone bill this month?
I know it's ringing, Tom. Yes.
It's probably lightning.
Tom has all these fears of things that he does. And
it's probably lightning. It's probably lightning somewhere in that area of the state, and it's hitting the lines and ringing your phone.
This is what you need, Ted. Can you see this?
What is that?
It's an old Globe phone patch from the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, we have a Telos NX12 hybrid here.
It's called a Globe patcher. Now, when I use this thing, it worked every time. There's not a solid state anything in it. If you need me to ship it to you, I'll loan it to you.
Wow. I've got some phone patches too, but you know what? There's not much use for them nowadays. That everybody's got a cell phone all over the world, man.
I know they're hard to find.
Yeah. Hey, Riley. While we're waiting on some more calls, I got some pictures here of you and your shack here. First of all, I'm gonna throw it up here. Here's a picture of the Sarnoff citation that you got for your significant contribution and outstanding achievements in wireless communications. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. That's a very prestigious award. And let's move on here real quick while we're waiting on a call. What are we looking at here, Riley?
We got a call here now. Let's try this one here.
All right.
Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, this is Ron. My call is K8HSY. I have a question for Riley. Does FCC still use official observers And if not, why not? Because frankly, that was a pretty effective.
Whoops.
Uh-oh.
I think he.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, he's
Okay,
still.
go ahead.
I've got the question. I heard that part.
Okay, you want to?
Yeah, the
go ahead and,
FCC has a cooperative agreement with the league, and they aren't FCC official observers, but the FCC counts on them to clear out a lot of problems that would be enforcement problems. It's just a voluntary thing, and it is a very important program, and probably you'll see that being used more and more. It hasn't been used a lot. I used it a lot to help me detect a pattern of problems, frequencies and times of day of operation and so forth. But it's a very important program, and that they do a lot of hard work, and people don't realize that the people who are official observers are doing this on their own time. They could be on the air enjoying radio, but they're doing this and sending these notices out to try to help people avoid any conflict with the rules. And as Tom was talking about, and people in the 70s that got notices like this, 60s and 70s, you respected that and you appreciated the fact that that person was doing you a favor. Now too often when somebody gets a notice, they take offense and think, well, how dare this person send me a notice? Because that's a sign of our times. People don't realize when somebody's trying to help them and they assume offenses. But it's a very important program, and amateur radio is supposed to be self-regulating. And for all the power and the privileges that we have and the frequencies, we have very few rules. And to the extent it becomes less and less self-regulating, we'll end up having more rules. And nobody wants that, because we want a bare minimum of rules to encourage experimentation and participation and enjoyment and new modes and new activities. So the observers, I think, help keep that balance. And when you get one of those notices, it's not because somebody has sat there with nothing else to do and just singled you out. It's because somebody genuinely saw a problem or perceived a problem in what you were doing or in your signal. Now, they're going to make mistakes just like the police do. But it served a very valuable purpose for my program, and I think Laura feels the same way. It's very important, and they should get a lot more recognition than they are getting, because they do a great job in that sense.
We got a call coming in here. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, you're on the radio.
Yeah, hey, Ted.
Yeah,
Hi.
This is Ted, and
Question.
Riley's here, and
Question, Ted.
Tom Medlin. Go
Riley?
ahead.
Thanks, Ted. Jeff, N3VE. Question, I guess I'm a little behind on the webcast. I guess it lags a little bit. Talking about the OOs, how do you become an OO?
Well, the
That's a
OO
good question.
program is run by the ARRL. And you apply. They have a training program, and if you're needed, they'll put you in a training program and show you how to do it, what to do, and provide you with the material and so forth.
Okay, very good. So contact the ARRL if you think you've got an issue in the area and you want to, become one of these official observers. You can do that.
Yes, contact them, and they'll discuss it with you. They may have observers in your area, but then again, there's some areas where there's a real scarcity of official observers. But they have a training program and a whole set of documentation on that. A lot of good books and advice, and they'll discuss it with you and see what the need is and go from there.
That's a great answer. Thank you very much, and a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the work you've done.
What was your call
Thank
sign
you.
again?
Good night.
Was it N3?
November 3, Victor Echo.
N3VE. Well, thank you for calling in.
November 3, Victor Echo.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you looked me up. I don't think I've been contacted by you guys yet.
Well, you're fixing to get your first citation.
I always like it when I hear a call sign I don't recognize.
Uh-huh. Hey, Riley, we talked a little earlier about the things going on 14.3.13. Here's a question from Mike VE3MIC. He's wanting to know, has the FCC ever coordinated with Industry Canada for enforcement? Do they work together?
Yes, we do work with Industry Canada, but Canada feels that they have, I'm trying to put this in correct and politically correct language here. Canada, I guess, just to put it bluntly, it seems that Canada just doesn't care when it comes to free speech. I mean, they have a person up in Canada that's been a big problem for this country and for the Canadians for years and years and years, and they've done nothing about it. They just don't care. The things that person says over the air would end up getting somebody in jail down here. The threats, he's threatened to kill half the Canadian government, and they still don't care. So we do work with Industry Canada. I was never able to successfully work with them in the amateur area because they just hide behind free speech and they just don't seem to care. Now, maybe the situation's changed in the last few years. I don't know, but probably the person that called in this is referring to the Canadian operator up there.
We got another one coming in here.
Okay.
Second. Hello there. You're on the air.
Ted, this is Bill Chisholm, WZ5X.
Okay.
And I just wanted to ask Riley what he thought the chances are of a person that has a felony charge, aggravated assault, female under 13. His license was due a year ago, and the FCC has it tied up. We don't want him to get his license renewed. I talked with Riley or sent him an email here a few years ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago, when we wrote the FCC, and we wrote this guy. And the FCC seems to think if you got a felony charge and assault on a female, that the chances of getting your license are not too good. And I just wanted to hear Riley's comment.
All right, thank you.
I don't really have a good answer as to the chances. I know that there is a whole stack of license renewals that are being held up because of felony charges and so forth, criminal convictions and so forth. And I don't know how they will end up sorting all that out. But I understand that they're not really going anywhere as far as allowing any renewals.
But you know, Riley, it's felons do get license. I mean, I know of famous felons that have received their license, so it's not just a completely you don't get it if you're a felon, right? I guess
it has to relate to character qualifications, and the commission's job is to evaluate your character qualifications to hold an amateur radio license. That's the theory of the application process in the first place. And so there are probably hundreds of complaints where somebody has found that a licensed operator has a criminal conviction, maybe just got out of prison, maybe is in prison, so forth and so on. And they filed a complaint about it, saying that this person shouldn't be able to retain an amateur license or get a renewal. And those are being evaluated on a case-by-case basis. As far as I know that there's not any movement that I've seen in that area, because the case that this fellow mentions is one of many like it that have been held up for years and years. I don't know how that will all be sorted out.
Well, hey, I want to say hello to Bill, WZ5X. Bill's a good friend of mine. Bill lives in North Carolina there now, but he grew up, and I grew up in the same little town in northeast Arkansas. And Bill had his license back in the 50s. That's how far Bill goes back. Bill, you must be 100 years old now, aren't you?
If the caller is gone now.
Oh, he's gone now. Okay, I was just going to rib Bill a little bit here. Hey, Riley, real quick while we're looking, see if another call comes in. Let's get back down to your pictures here. We had this picture here. That's some Heathkit stuff.
Yeah, that's. I had several vintage stations at one time, and you'll see the Drake twins there on the right, and a Heathkit linear that I built in, I think that's the linear I built in 73, something like that, and an old Drake tuner. And that's in the room I'm in now, actually. Behind me is vintage equipment. It's not the same equipment, but there's There's a Drake 2NT back there and a 2B and an HT37 that's in intensive care right now. And
so what was the output? What was the output of that? That's, I was looking at that Heathkit amp there. Was that legal limit?
Oh yeah. No, it wasn't. That's what was it? 1200 watts? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know they got some that are or were back then, you know.
Yeah. I think it was. I never ran it full bore.
Yeah. Hey, now this is must be a newer picture, or it's somewhere else.
No, that's the same room, different station there. Okay. I think there's the FT 101 and a 102 there. I can't really tell from the picture. There's the ICOM. Now, that's not vintage. There's an ICOM 746. I don't have that particular equipment anymore. I've traded it and sold it and so forth. But that was a very nice station I had set up down here for years and years. And the only piece of modern equipment there, or solid state, as far as I can tell, is that ICOM 746 over there towards the right.
Well, the comments on the chat room coming in are the shack picture is way too organized and clean. Was it always like that, or was that just for the picture?
It was mostly for the picture. I can never keep.
Oh, it even gets cleaner. Look at this.
Yeah, then that's basically the station I have now. Now that desk, I had that shortly after I got my novice license. That desk was 50 years old when I got it in a furniture store. They sold it to me for $15, and I kept it as a radio desk ever since. That's the solid state equipment there, and that's basically the only modern stuff that I have. And there's an FT 920 there on the left that I have, still use that. I think that might be a 950 beside it, which I've since sold. And then the ALS 600 amplifier, which is a great amp, and that's basically what I'm using today.
All right, let's look outside.
Well, this tower, I'm earlier in the program that my Elmer, who's 90 or 91 now, found that tower. He was near the Spartanburg, South Carolina airport and saw him taking that tower down. And he went up and talked to him, and they were going to take it to the junkyard. And he asked them if he could haul it off, and they said, yeah, if you get it out of here, you can have it.
Oh, wow.
So he and some buddies took it apart. It's only 35 feet tall, but I went down and brought it up in a U-Haul, and we put it together here. But on top of it is a 10-foot mast with a TA-33 on it. And so that only gives me about 44, 45 foot height, but we're on a ridge anyway here, so that's basically all I need. And it's an old Vesto tower, and those of you who used to look at Allied radio catalogs and daydream up in there probably remember seeing the Vesto tower advertisements. And cleaning it up, I found the old Vesto tag and model on the back of it is still riveted on that tower. So I cleaned it up and painted it, and can go up that ladder and then stand on the gantry up there, and with your safety rails and work on the antenna. I can lower the antenna and work on that and the rotor and so forth. It's very easy to.
Looks very nice. Yeah. What do you think, Ted? We need to get a couple of those for us.
There you go. Yeah, I've been watching the phone here. We missed 2 or 3 calls, but maybe those folks will call back. We'll just have to sit here and watch the light bulbs.
Well, I tell you, I mean, hey, I could go all night here. We've actually gone an hour and a half here with Riley. It's been very interesting. I'm sure we could probably talk another hour and a half. Let's just see if there's any more questions here real quick in the chat room. And guys, the phone is still open, 615-965-5085. Give us a call.
Let me say this too. If any folks are listening have questions, you need to get to ask them. My email address is my call sign at awrl.net. K4 Zulu Delta Hotel, K4ZDH at awrl.net. So if you have some questions, send them to me, and I'll do my best to find an answer for you.
All right, that's great. And do you make any Hamfest? You going to make Huntsville here in August?
I won't make Huntsville, but I'll be going to Duke City Hamfest in Albuquerque, New Mexico next weekend, not this coming, but the next. And I'll make a lot of them, give a lot of radio talks, and I'll basically go about anywhere I'm invited to do it. And I still enjoy doing it. Still very actively involved in radio, both operating and going to events and AmFest and so forth.
Well, we'll have to have you on the QSO show. I know that you were going to do that some time ago, but we were never able to connect. We're both going in different directions too fast.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that. I'm sorry that I didn't get back with you. I probably didn't get back with you because I didn't write it down. And at Dayton, there's so many people to talk to and so forth. But I'm sorry I didn't follow up on that. But give me a buzz and we'll see what we can work out.
Well, I was going to say Dayton's just not the place. I mean, it's weird. We're there broadcasting, so we don't get to see any. I don't get to go to the flea market or go around. We're on the air for 5-hour stretches for 3 days. So, and everybody else is busy. If they're a vendor, they're really just hoofing it. And even the league people. I know Alan Pitts and I had a heck of a time trying to connect just to say hello.
Well, I understand that the numbers for Dayton this past one were good numbers, and the vendors seem happy. A lot of the big dealers told me that they had a very successful there.
The numbers came up a little bit. Maybe to start growing. Riley, I've been going for 35 years, and I don't know how far back you've gone to Dayton, but man, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, it was so crowded there, even outside, you couldn't even walk around. Now it's not. I think it's half what it used to be, but I think the attendance is starting to come back up a little bit.
Well, even with lower numbers, it's still great for an event like that. With the internet and eBay and so forth, a lot of the AmFest and flea markets have taken a hit. They seem to do well.
Well, here's a question from a chat room. Don't let your ego get too high here, but how does Riley feel about the FCC enforcement today versus when he was active with the FCC?
Well, FCC enforcement today is different. In a lot of ways, it's better. It's just different. In some ways, it doesn't seem like it's better. But mainly, as I said earlier in the show, there's an awful lot going on. You just don't hear about it. Because of the Privacy Act, they only publicize the final actions. And there's still some problem areas, and they're working on it. I think you will see a lot of activity, and you'll hear about a lot of actions the rest of the summer and into the fall, because they've been working hard at it. And Laura has a big responsibility. She was also now with the Eastern Regional Council for a while because that person had left the Philly office. She does a great job, and you'll see some very good enforcement actions coming out. But as I said, nobody can regulate stupidity, and some of the problems that you hear on the amateur bands just aren't violations of the rules. Well,
Ted, what do you think in closing here we should say? We're going to invite Riley back again?
Well, I think that would be an excellent idea, and also I'd like to have him on QSO. But I guess the thing is that, I think one thing that Riley adds and brings to the table here is just strictly the wisdom of having been in a position to have to be the enforcement guy who has too many things to enforce, and in some cases maybe not quite enough power to be able to solve a lot of problems, and which I guess would be that I would think he would kind of almost have to pick, as they say, pick your priorities or pick what you're going to do, because you're not going to be able to whip them all, and I think what he can do is he can bring to the table the wisdom of what he's observed and what he feels that other amateurs in general can do to enhance the hobby and help keep the bands, bright, positive, up places to be where people can have fun, enjoy the hobby. And then when times turn bad, when the hobby can effectively function in emergency conditions, I think that there's some wisdom in this, and I think there's a lot of folks out there, including myself, that need to learn the reasons why behind everything, and get information as to how we're supposed to react with the amateur radio community as well as the FCC, and what we can expect and what we may think is reasonable may not be a reasonable thing at all. It may not be possible. So that's what I think. I think he could be back on here a number of times, and we still would just be scratching the surface.
It's important to realize the FCC works for the public. They don't work for any one radio service. And with today's technology, when we have a problem in the amateur service, it's some idiot with a microphone. If there's a problem in the Universal Service Fund, it's a multi-million-dollar fraud. So where do you put resources? We have to keep all that in perspective. The FCC does a good job for our service when you consider all the things they have to do. And as I said earlier, if you want to get an idea of all the things the FCC is involved in, just watch the Daily Digest for a few months. It's just phenomenal, all the different things that they get involved in. And we could help ourselves a lot by not humoring some of the idiots. If there's somebody on that's don't take the bait, and just don't talk to them. Just go to another frequency. Just ignore them. Don't take the bait. The Chinese have a saying about Americans that Americans will save face and lose butt, and that's the way we are. On 313 and some of those other frequencies, people will get on there and take the bait every single time. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy, and the FCC cannot be a babysitter.
All right. Well, Riley, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We really enjoyed it. I think we got a lot of questions from the chat room, and had a few people had the opportunity to talk to you by phone. We want to have you back on here again someday soon. Maybe we'll run across one of the Hamfests here real soon.
Okay.
So we're going to say 73 to you, and any last remarks you're going to make, or Ted, jump in there before we go into the next part of the show.
Well, that's some impressive equipment you got behind you there, Tom. I can't tell exactly what it is, but looks very impressive.
Well, it's all done with smoke and mirrors, believe me. If you saw where I was right now, it wouldn't be that impressive.
Okay.
But you know what? It's doing the job, and us ham radio operators are famous for making a lot of stuff happen out of nothing, right?
That's right.
And that's the way we do it here. I've got stuff put together here with bubble gum working. All right, Riley, thank you very much. 73.
I really enjoyed the show. Thank you. Anytime.
And thank you very much for being on. We really, I personally appreciate your appearance on here. I think it's good, and I think it can add a lot to the amateur radio community. I'm tongue tied tonight. I can't talk. We got two. After I leave here, I've got to get on 5085 and play music up until the Art Bell show. So if you get a chance, folks, tune in and listen on 5085. I'll say something funny about Tom on the air because he's always ribbing me. It's like, this is a chance I have to get it back at him, and he can't do anything about it.
Hey, I'm looking forward. Maybe I'll try to tune in to it. Art Bell's back, and he always pulls big crowds, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's amazing. And being on shortwave now, of course, he's tickled to be on shortwave. I'll share with you just a little story here real quick, if that's okay. We were talking to him about coming on the air and whatnot, and my son Matt was primarily the one doing the talking. Anyhow, he called Matt and he said, well, I don't hear anything on this 5085 frequency. And Matt says, well, let me get my dad on the phone. So he called me, and Art was on the phone, and I said, well, it's the reason you're not getting anything is it's not on, So I said, well, let me go turn it on, So I come into the studio, and I turned 5085 on and did the proper IDs and all that. And then I started playing some oldies. And when the carrier came on, Art, I think, had about 30 over or 40 over on his receiver. The first thing out of his mouth was, holy moly. And then his friend Paul was tuned in, and I think he said that it was 50 over where he was. So Art says, well, can you talk on that thing? I said, well, yeah, that's what we do. He says, well, can you play a song and dedicate it to Paul? I said, sure. So I played it. And, what he did is he said, and you might as well dedicate it to me while you're at it. So I said, okay, this goes out to Paul and Art Bell out in Pahrump. And I played the song. And, him and his friend Paul got all excited over that. And I thought, isn't that strange? Here's a man that's been on 500 radio stations simultaneously. WJR in Detroit, CKLW, WLS, WABC, all these 50 kilowatt AMs and big FMs all over the United States. And he got all excited about the fact that we'd played a song on a shortwave station. So that tells you the man he's radio at heart all the way. And, it's good for him to be on, I think, because I think he's done a lot to promote the hobby because he talks freely about it, and I think it's a good thing. But we're glad to have him on. So, and I'll leave you folks and say 73s because I've got to get on and play some music, I guess, up until the Art Bell show.
I just wanted to say,
again, Riley.
I just wanted to say from the first night we've had listeners in Australia tune in on WTWW. So the station's getting out. You guys are doing a good job.
Thank you again, Riley. 73 to you, and you have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. 73 to everybody, Riley, and I'll talk to you later, Ted. Thanks for being with us again tonight. You made the show.
73.
Ted, you want to stick around or are you gone? I think Ted's gone. Okay. All right. Well, that was an interesting show tonight. That was Riley Hollingsworth, K4ZDH from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Riley is retired from the Federal Communications Commission, and his job for many years was the enforcement of our airwaves. So hopefully you got to get a question to Riley and learn a little bit more about the FCC and how they operated. Again, the chat room, I just want to explain to you what happened with the chat room, guys. We had our chat room was a Java-based chat room. It started having those security issues that all browser people don't like, and stuff was starting to happen. So our chat room people redesigned and built a new chat room to stop up those security holes. And what I didn't realize was when we converted over to it that it was going to be a really high cost for us. It was, instead of a fixed cost per month for unlimited, they had it priced at 50 users, 100 users, 250, and the top they had was 500 users. We will have upwards to maybe 1,500 people in the chat room at a big event like Dayton. But when you did the calculations to pay for that chat room, it was going to cost us well over $1,000 to do that. So most hams really like to take the cheaper route. So we decided to scrap that chat room. And about midnight last night, I started working to replace it. We have a working chat room tonight. I embedded it in the web page. It's a little small. I need to work on making it larger. Also, I think it's supposed to pop out. We'll make it where you can pop it out, resize it, and so forth. The good thing is that you are now able to use IRC clients like MIRC and other groups. I've seen several people already talking about that. So I think that's going to make some people happy. Yeah, there's a thank you right there for switching to IRC. I think it's going to be good. Basically the new chat room that we had moved to a month or two ago, you guys, I think all you guys have probably learned to love Hambot, and I think everybody knows Hambot. He's the one that picks your name and quietens the room and gives prizes away at these Hamfests. Well, with the last chat room we had, the newest one, Hambot was not going to work anymore. But the people here at Digital Edition, that's who we got the chat room from, they're going to, I believe, help us. I was talking to one of the main people there, and I think they're very interested in helping us to get Hambot working and doing a lot of other improvements here. So we can turn this around and make it a good thing. And I think it's going to be good. It looks stable. Again, I've only used it for about since last night. Well, actually, since this afternoon we got it working. So there's a lot I don't know about it yet, but I think it has a lot of possibilities. Huntsville Hamfest is coming up mid-August, in about 3 weeks, I guess. And we're going to be there. We're going to be webcasting. We'll go live Friday prior to the Hamfest weekend. We'll webcast our drive all the way to Huntsville, and we have prizes. I'm starting to get a lot of prizes in for the event that we're going to give out to our users. Not sure how we're going to do the prizes yet. I don't know if we can get the chat room ready to work with Hambot. Well, Hambot's not going to work by Huntsville. We're going to have to figure out a way to pick people's names randomly from the list. So we probably are going to have to go back to some type registered chat room user where you really need to register your name with an email address, just so we'll be able to get in touch with you. So we'll work all that out. There will be prizes at Huntsville regardless of what happens with the chat room. I'll say Sammy Threes, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Help us spread the word about the webcast. Send out a tweet to your friends on Tuesday nights about the webcast. Put it in your Facebook groups. We're really trying to build up this program. We're looking for your ideas on what you'd like to see. I'd love to have a couple different segments on here about different things. So send us your ideas, and if any of you guys want to be on the program and you have something special you want to talk about, please, shoot me an email or give me a call or something. Now, what we've been doing is allowing people at the end of the show to join the webcast through Google Hangout, Google Hangouts. So Bruce posted a link in the chat room a few minutes ago. If you click on that link and you have a camera and a mic and a Google Plus account, you should be able to come into our studio here, and we can take up to 10 at one time and put 10 people on this webcast at one time. So this is the informal part. Come in, stick around a while, drink a cup of coffee, chat with us, whatever you want to do. But join us on that link. Bruce just sent it out again. I hope it works. It's going to take me about 2 or 3 minutes to get on there, but in the meantime, we're going to keep the webcast up. It will continue to be up, and hopefully we'll get some people on Hangout, and they can be part of the show, and their families can watch them on here. So I'm going to be I'll be back in just a minute. Don't go away.
So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind. There the answer comes.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.
All right, look at there. I see we got one person on here. We got John on here with us. Hey, John, how you doing? How you doing, John? You're frozen.
All right, I think he's talking to me. I can almost hear it. Let me turn the volume up.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, John. I was talking to you. I said, "Hi, how you doing here, man?" Oh, you got his clown hair on, man. All right, man. You looking good there, John.
This time, so I'm having volume problems.
Having volume problems? Okay. Well, Bruce, how you doing? While John sets his volume, go ahead, Bruce. How you doing, Bruce?
How you doing, Tom? Great show.
Oh, you want it on the big screen?
So Bruce, did you watch most of the show there?
Able to hear him.
Yeah, I got it right here. You can
Very well.
Oh yeah, cool. Hey, thanks for sending the link out. I didn't have the link to send out, so I appreciate you finding it and sending it out. Looks like Russ Woodman just joined us. Hey, we got several joining us. Look at this, man. Hey, look at this. Let me get everybody on the screen here. We're starting to get some activity here. Let's see who we got on here tonight. Let's see. There's Russ. Hey, Russ, how you doing? Oh, you turned your camera off, Russ.
Good, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing good. Let me see who else we got. Hey, we got Scott on here. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? And you got Shelby over here too.
Doing good. And I see Shelby there. We hammed it forward. We hammed it forward last week, and we ordered Shelby a ham radio online test. So, is he studying yet?
Yep, he's been studying hard.
All right, that's cool. Well, let's see. So he's studying hard. I want to get some reports back from him, on how he's doing. Okay. All right. So Scott, now where are you located? I forgot.
What did he say?
Where are you located?
Goodman, Wisconsin.
Okay, you're in Wisconsin. Let's go over here to Scott. Let's go over here to Russ. Hey, Russ, how you doing? What are you drinking here, Russ? Is that coffee?
Oh, I'm doing a lot of un-PC things right now. I don't know if I should advertise it.
Okay. All right. Very good. I didn't know if that was coffee or Coca-Cola or what was in that.
There's Coca-Cola. Sure, that's part of it.
Okay. Very good. Let's see. Okay, back to let's jump down here to now. Where are you, Russ? You're in Missouri.
I'm actually in Arkansas right now, but
in Arkansas. Okay. Where in Arkansas?
Mountain Home.
Okay, I had a roommate lived in Mountain Home. Now, right where you are. Let me jump down here to John. Hey, John, how you doing, man? John, can you hear me? Your mic is muted. You have to unmute it at the top of the screen. The top of the screen. You have to unmute the mic. Top of the screen. Unmute your mic. Okay, John's not doing too good. All right, we'll jump down here to Bruce. Hey, Bruce. Wake up, Bruce.
I'm awake.
All right. How did the show go tonight? And tell me how the chat room went. I didn't get to watch it a whole lot. Did the chat room function pretty good?
Yeah, pretty good, but the chat room is new to you, so
yeah,
it's just like the other chat room. It'll just take time for people to get used to it. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think so. It looks like it worked pretty good. At least it didn't drop off or crash or anything. Oh, look at there. We got old Dan in there. We got Dan from up in Wisconsin somewhere. What's the name of that town? You're muted, Dan. There you go. Where are you, Dan? I forget. No, you're muted. Something's wrong. Plug your mic in.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah. Who was that?
It's Jeff N3VE. I still can't get my camera.
There's yeah. Oh, I wondered who that black spot was. How you doing, Jeff? Why aren't you?
I don't know. It jumps up for a second, and I've been closing down Manicam and Webcam 7 and restarting it, and I'll try again. Had it working for a few weeks,
Yeah. I don't know what happened here, man.
That was a great show.
Well, thanks. Did the new chat room surprise you?
I liked it. Yeah. Well, you've been using that for a couple times now, haven't you?
Done what?
The chat room. You've used it for a few weeks now, or is this brand new?
No. I installed it last night. This afternoon at 3:00, we were still trying to make it work.
Oh, so this is another new chat room.
Yeah. The last new one we got, we didn't know it, but the price went up to $2,000.
Well, you can't. Who's going to do that?
Yeah, right. And I know all you hams out there don't want to pay for that chat room, so I got one at a much more reasonable rate here.
Well, good for you.
And the guys at Digital Edition that are doing it for us, I think they really want to work with us and help us, and we want to help get them some exposure too.
Very good.
All right, so back to Dan here. Dan, you got your mic working?
Good evening.
There he is. All right, what have you been up to, Dan?
I've been busy at AirVenture.
Oh, yeah, tell us about AirVenture, man. I've been seeing the pictures.
Biggest air show in the world. It's like Dayton on steroids.
Yeah, and is it over? Is it over?
Attendance was 550,000.
550,000. Wow. Were the bathrooms clean? Huh? How were the bathrooms? Hey, compare the bathrooms to Dayton. You know how were they? About the same?
10 times better than what Dayton has.
Well, they must be new.
The facilities, yeah.
It must be new.
They're constantly updating them and
Hey,
stuff
look
like
who's
that.
on here. We got, well, there's Tim. Hey, Tim, where are you? I don't know where Tim is. I forget.
He's in Michigan.
Up in Michigan. Okay, yeah. Well, not working. All right. So let's jump back down here to Shelby. Hey, Shelby. Shelby, have you started studying for your tech test yet?
Yeah, I have.
All right. And are you learning it? Is the program doing pretty good for you?
Yeah, it is.
Well, good. How long do you think it's going to take before? How long do you think it's going to take to get a license there?
I would say, a few months maybe.
What's that?
Maybe a month?
Yeah, maybe 1 to 2 months.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, hey, great. You just keep us informed of your progress there, and if you need any help, just get on here after the show and ask questions. Okay? I'm sure we'll find somebody that knows the answers. We'll get Bruce down here in New York to help answer that. Hey, Bruce, you got your antenna up out there in New York yet?
In 90-degree weather, I'm fat. I ain't going outside.
So what are you gonna wait till winter time to put it up?
No hurry.
Oh man.
Any lights on?
You know, I've got 6 or 8 antennas I put up. I'm always putting antennas up, and I never use them.
You have trees to throw wires up. I have no trees.
Yeah.
I live in a concrete jungle.
Yeah. Your audio is kind of garbly a little bit. You don't have anything. You're not chewing on a cough drop, are you?
No.
Okay.
Might be my fan.
Okay, we got Ron on here. Ron, where are you, Ron? Where are you from? Oh, that's Ron. That's ID. K9 ID. Ron, hi. Hey, Ron. Unmute your mic, Ron.
Say good evening, everybody.
What's up, Tim?
Yeah, I just got everything rolling here and still doing updates. How's my camera look, Tom?
Oh, yeah, it looks pretty good. It's a little dark, of course, but you know, it's okay. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's dark in here. I got a new microphone.
Oh, I see your new microphone. Looks cool. I see the yeah. Oh man, you can do DJing now, man.
Got a new computer today. Got a new 8-core processor here.
Wow, that thing got a light in it.
Yeah, she's done.
What's the light do? Just is that so the mice can see where they're going?
Okay, well, then we can play, guys.
That looks pretty nice here.
And I was actually walking out the door.
Let me jump down here. Hey, there's a Ron that joined us. Ron, how you doing, Ron?
And he just called his boss, and his boss called his boss.
Ron, can you hear me?
And they made an amendment to that one time, so and I got in. But
okay, Ron is not hearing this. You know what's happening, folks? they're listening on the webcast, and it's 30 seconds delay. So if you're listening to me right now and you're hearing me through the webcast, go to the video player and click on that speaker and mute it or turn it down.
Because it happens all the time. That they can't play in places that require you to be 21.
Okay. So, all right. Back down to John down there. John, you're looking better now. Is your mic working?
Stipulations in there, and they probably found out that they can do that. And that's
I don't know why we're not communicating with John. Hey, John. Hello. Hey, John. Hey, John.
Hello.
Test 1 2.
I can hear you now.
Can you? Can you hear me now?
I can see you. I can hear you.
If I say, okay, when I say 3, say hello. 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
Okay, there you go. All right, so you got it working there now. I didn't know what was wrong a while ago, but hey, glad you're on here. This is John. This is the man that does the ham. We had him on the show last week. In case you missed it, we've got Riley down here on the hangout. He's got one of John's study guides for the tech test, and we're going to try to give reports every week on how Riley's doing on his test. I've got good hopes that we're going to get him all the way up to extra here this year.
Hey, John, can I say something there, Tom?
Who is that? Is that Bruce?
That's Tim, K4KW.
Yo, hey, Tim, go ahead.
I want to tell you, John is all the reason that I got my extra class.
All right.
Remember me, John? K4KW from down in Florida.
Now, let me check on this. Was it me who did that studying, or was it you?
That was me that did that studying.
Okay, I think you got to take the credit then.
All right.
That was me that called you and said, "Give me a subscription to Ham Test Online, man."
Well, I'm glad it works for you. I really am.
Yeah, 6 weeks after I did it, it was rocking and rolling. Yep, we made the extra class. That was about six to 7 years ago.
Congratulations.
Well, guys, I'm real impressed. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 8 people on here tonight, man. I mean, what happened?
Everybody wanted to hear Riley. That was a really interesting talk.
Well, I back here every week. It was a good discussion, I think.
I agree.
All right.
How are you doing, Shelby?
I'm doing good.
Have you done any studying this week?
Yeah, matter of fact, I studied a couple hours ago.
Awesome. How's it going? Are you learning anything?
Yeah, I've been learning a lot.
Awesome.
He's been moving. He's been improving quite a bit. He's got like six and a quarter hours for the week. So,
a lot.
We've been giving it. So, and I've been trying to get my 2-hour goals every day too. So he'll study, and then when he goes to sleep, I'll hit the books and start studying. So.
Are you having fun and making good progress too?
Yep, I'm doing good, and he's doing great. So hopefully in no time we'll be able to set up for the test and go for it. I haven't called them yet. It's got to be a phone call, so I figure we'll give it 2 weeks when I put in the door there, and then next week, hopefully sometime I'll get a hold of them and try to set up a testing schedule for us guys.
Right. The important thing is you have the date in your mind, and that's what motivates you to actually sit down and do the studies.
Right.
I got a good story for you on taking the test. A few years back, we had a 8-year-old gal here, and her dad were both going for their technician test, and when just as they were going to walk over to sit at the desk to take their test, the Dad looked at the daughter and says, I bet I get a better score than you. And she looked back at her dad and said, no way. They both passed. They both passed, and the unique thing is now every member of that family has a license, and the little girl and her dad both are extra class now.
Awesome.
That's great. Now, Dan, you know the rules. You're supposed to have your. This is not just a talkie; it's a moving pictures, man.
Okay, I'll turn my camera on.
There you go.
I got a great face for radio.
There you go. You do have a good face for radio there. Everybody's wanting to see you out there.
I just posted a video on the special event stations at AirVenture.
Oh yeah, man, I've been kind of following it in some of the pictures and stuff, man. That's something out there, man. Wow.
Yeah,
and I guess it's over. Is it over now?
Yeah, it's over now.
No accidents or anything, right?
One accident. Everybody walked away.
That's good, because I've seen some of these places where they have these big jumbo jets, man. It just, oh man, it's sad.
And the thing is this year they had over 14,000 aircraft that registered for the convention. And give you an idea, when they land them, they actually have dots on the runways, and they're landing 3 at a time. So it's long, medium, and short. And it's rather amazing to watch them come in 3 at a clip.
They've got to have. It's amazing how safe the airline industry is. Mm-hmm. When you think about all those flights, all concentrating in one place, and really, nobody ran over anybody, or engines fell off.
At one point, they this past year they were doing one landing every 28 seconds.
Yeah. Well, our airport gets gets busy here in Memphis. I retired from FedEx, and from midnight from about 10 in the morning, this becomes, I think, the busiest airport probably in the world. We've got a lot of flights coming in and out of there.
Yeah, this airport here becomes the world's busiest airport for the week.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Wow, that's a lot there. Man, this is like a big party tonight. I'm glad to see this. Making me happy. Look at all the people that joined us tonight. Can you imagine if we had waiting room only here,
All right, Tom, I'm going to go back to the other hangout.
All right, Bruce, thank you for your help tonight and getting that link out to everybody.
All right.
I was a little afraid there toward the end of the show. I thought the link might not work, since we haven't tested, some of the things like links don't work sometimes. So at least it did work. So, hey, that's cool.
Yeah, I went there to see it.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
All right.
All right, 73. We'll see you.
Tom.
Okay. So, well, let's see. Tim, you got that new computer there, man. What's that, an 8-core gigawatt? What do you got there, man? Describe it to us, man.
21 gigawatts.
What is
That's
it?
That's a gigawatt. I like that name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
800,
okay, Tom,
850 gigawatt.
I'm going to run too, so I'll catch up with you later.
Okay. All right. Tim, 73, thanks for checking in with us and hang out.
Yep, catch you a little later, 7:30.
Okay, we'll see you.
Good night.
Well, let's see. What happened here? Ham, I see Ham test. He went blank. He went dark on us.
I don't know, maybe everyone's falling asleep.
Did you, John, did you do that intentionally?
What did I do?
You have no picture now.
I see him.
You do?
I can see myself.
All I see is a white circle with a little stick man drawn in it.
Oh, yeah, that's the profile picture.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing.
That's on my profile picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing him just fine.
Okay.
Not much of a profile.
Yeah. Hey, Ron. Hey, Ron. Let's check with Ron here. Hey, Ron's able to talk now. How you doing, Ron?
Yeah, I had the wrong microphone selected. I was
That's
probably
okay.
feeding the audio off the
Now
hamburger.
we've talked before, Ron, but I forget where you are.
I'm in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yep, and well, of course, we'll see you in Huntsville.
Yeah. Did you get to catch most of the show tonight?
Yeah, quite a bit of it.
Okay. And were you surprised with the chat room when you jumped in there?
Actually, I've been using IRC for many, many years, and I was surprised and pleased to see that it had moved to an IRC chat room. IRC has been around since really the beginnings of the internet. It's a very old format. It's a text-based format, and it's very stable, very thoroughly debugged. There are dozens of different client programs you can be using with it. There's desktop versions, there's mobile versions, web versions, and it's really one of the easiest kind of shops to access from just about any kind of device. And it always works. A lot of these web-based ones especially fall to pieces when you get too many users, but IRC can support thousands at a time and does it very well.
Yeah, we were fairly with the Java chat room we had the last few years, but with the security issues coming up, they had to fix them, and a lot of people now a lot of browser companies are trying to get away from that. So, we've come back to IRC, and it looks good. We used it probably 6 or 7 years ago. We used it for a while. I think it's got some great capabilities, and I think it's going to let us get Hambot working again, one way or the other. We will have a new Hambot. Hambot was like a member of the family. If you followed us to any of these Hamfest, when we give prizes away, Hambot is real busy the whole weekend.
Oh yeah.
So we've lost. Hopefully, we'll have Hambot Jr. come on and.
Well, on the IRC programs, they have their own macro language that you can write in.
Yeah. Well, Hambot did a lot of things. First of all, it looked at the data. It looked at the number of users logged in. It also, we loaded in all the prizes up front. And some vendors say, I want my prize to go only to the U.S., and some people say, my prize can go anywhere in the world. So we'd mark it U.S. only or worldwide. Well, then Hambot would based on that, Hambot would go in there and he would pick a person based on if he was a U.S. or if he was a international. And then he would go to QRZ.com and he'd pull up all the information and give us his address and all that. And then then Hambot would go out and say, K9 ID, are you here for the, the Comet watt meter or antenna analyzer? You got 60 seconds. And then Hambot would wait and he'd say, you got 45 seconds, 40, 30. And if anybody typed during that time, Hambot would silence them. And then if somebody answered, before we had Hambot, if a person answered and we had 500 people talking, sometimes we couldn't see the person answering in the time frame. But Hambot kept everybody quiet. They needed to be quiet. And then if anybody just hit a period and enter, Hambot says, there he is. And Hambot says, you made it within the time frame. Congratulations, So Hambot did a lot for us, and then of course it kept a database of it, and we came back to give the prizes out and so forth. And it did a lot of work for us. And people would argue at me before. We would try to take a stopwatch or something, or okay, you got 2 minutes, and we would turn the stopwatch on, or we would forget to turn it on, and then we'd say, okay, you got about a minute and a half left, and we'd count down like that, and we never really had the time, exactly right. So that's where Hambot's helped. And people would argue with me. They say, oh, I answered it before you said time was up. Well, if they argue at me, they usually win. So they usually got the prize. Hambot says, when he says, sorry, you didn't, he sends out a note and says, sorry, you didn't answer in time. If If he says you didn't answer, you didn't answer. You didn't argue with Hambot, So. And and Hambot would even kick or ban. They would kick a person if a person talked twice during prizes. Hambot would kick them out of the room, and they had to come back. So Hambot did a lot for us, a whole lot.
There's a tool for people who argue with Hambot. I don't know if you can. I got a picture of one here on the cap.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah. That's the wolf hong. How do you say it? Wolf hong?
Wolf hong, yeah.
Yeah. That's that's been around since forever. I remember that when I got my license many moons ago. That's kind of cool. Well, Ron, I guess we'll see you in Huntsville in a few weeks, right?
We'll have some prizes for you then.
Yeah, and Ron has donated, I think, some of those prizes for the webcast. Let's see, I think this is what he's got. Let me look here. Look at here, guys. This is and let's see. This is let me see if I can get it on camera here. I want everybody to see this, even on the webcast out there. Okay, there we go. This is one of the prizes that Ron donates to our chat room people. Hambot will call your name. Let me tell you, this is a well-built. This is a solid hat here, man. Let me tell you, nice embroidery. It looks good. Look at this. Look at that right there, man. Don't I look cool with that on? Now I don't know if Ron's still got it on his website. I haven't looked in a long time. But the display on his website said W5KUB. It said Tom on it. Now, I don't know if that's still on his website or not, but if you buy a hat, he'll put your own call on it.
Yeah, you don't have to get it with Tom's.
Yeah. I like the stars and stripes and stuff, and this is not available anymore right here. I love this. I mean, I'm a veteran myself, and veterans have a special in my heart. And I tell you, I love this. When I got this, and we gave these out as prizes too. This wedge, this desk wedge, and this is called the Stars and Stripes desk wedge. Kind of matches the hat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Oh man, I love things like this. I'd love to have a segment on the show for veterans. I don't know if we could get some kind of show together to have veterans talk about ham radio. I don't know. Hey, maybe they talk about old BC whatever radios in B29 over. Over the Pacific or something.
Now I wonder how many of these are still around. This has got a new cord on it, but this is an old headset. It's been rewired a dozen times. It's probably either Second World War.
Well, hold it up a little higher so I can see it. Okay, yeah.
It's either Second World War or Korean War vintage.
Oh, yeah. It's got the little soft ear pads there. Yeah.
It's got the soft ear pads. It's got the the headband that goes apart. It's got the terminals on the outsides. I'm sorry, let me get it up there. It's got the terminals on the outside so you can rewire it if you have to. This one's been rewired for a stereo headphone plug. The original cord is long gone. This one's got a mini on it, so it'll fit into my little external DSP over here, and all that. It's still comfortable, still comfortable, still works. It's got an Army Navy number on it, ANB81, and it's got got an NAF number on it, and